There was once a woman named Ilara who had spent her entire life feeling everything too deeply. From childhood, she sensed the moods in a room before anyone spoke. She could feel joy that wasn't hers and pain that hadn't been named. Her mother often said she was too sensitive. Her father called her dramatic. But Ilara didn't know how to be any other way. Her emotions weren't just feelings. They were colors. Storms, winds, crashing waves that swept her away with no warning. So when she met Adrian, she thought she had finally found someone who saw her. He didn't flinch at her intensity. At first, he admired it. He called her his angel, his muse. He said no one had ever understood him the way she did. And she, so hungry for acceptance, melted into his gaze. Not realizing it was a mirror made only for his own reflection, Adrian was magnetic, confident, a man who knew exactly how to speak to a heart like hers. He read her like a book, one she didn't even know she'd written. He knew where she ached, and he pressed into those wounds with a lover's grace, promising to heal what the world had broken. She thought it was love. She believed she was finally home. But what she had actually found was a trap, beautifully disguised as destiny. At first, everything felt magical. The connection, the passion, the feeling of being needed. He made her feel like the center of his universe. And slowly, without realizing it, she made him the center of hers. She gave and gave and gave. She excused his silences, his moods, his shifting energy. She convinced herself that his coldness was temporary, that his sharp words were just pain speaking. She stayed up late soothing his anxiety, encouraging his dreams, absorbing his insecurities. She diminished herself so he could shine. But what began as care turned into control. His compliments turned into comparisons. His affection became conditional. His love became a leash. He accused her of things she never did. He isolated her from friends with subtle remarks. He twisted her words. He made her doubt her memories. Slowly, Ilara stopped trusting herself. She began walking on eggshells in her own life. She tried harder, loved more, became smaller. She kept hoping that if she could just be enough, he would go back to the man she first met. But the man she fell for never existed. He was a mask, a performance, a calculated illusion designed to capture someone like her. Someone who leads with heart and forgives too easily. Years passed in this fog. Ilara lost weight, lost color, lost laughter. Her light dimmed, and still she blamed herself. Narcissists don't destroy people in one blow. They erode them, moment by moment, word by word, until the empath forgets who they are and becomes a reflection of the narcissist's wounds. Adrian's greatest weapon wasn't his anger. It was his charm, his ability to play victim when needed, to cry at the right moments, to say just enough to keep her hoping. But one night, everything changed. It wasn't dramatic. There was no screaming, no final betrayal. It was quiet, like a whisper from her soul. Ilara was standing in the kitchen, washing a glass, and she felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just silence, an inner silence, a stillness that came not from exhaustion, but from clarity. Something had clicked. She saw the patterns, the cycles, the manipulation. She saw herself, who she had been before him, who she had become with him. And she realized she didn't want to be lost anymore. That night she didn't fight. She didn't beg. She went to bed with peace in her chest. And in the morning she left, not physically, not yet, but emotionally, spiritually. She unplugged her energy from his. She stopped reacting. She stopped explaining. She stopped justifying. Adrian noticed. He raged. He guilt-tripped. He accused. But nothing landed. Her silence was no longer submission. It was sovereignty. And that terrified him, because narcissists draw power from reaction, from emotional chaos, from control. And when the empath wakes up, truly wakes up, the narcissist loses their throne. The power dynamic collapses. He tried everything. Sweet words, threats, promises, tears. But Ilara saw through all of it. Not with anger, not with hate, but with understanding. She saw the broken boy behind the mask. She saw his emptiness, his need to feed on others to feel whole. And she no longer confused his neediness with love. She stopped taking responsibility for his healing. She stopped trying to rescue him from himself. She began to rescue herself. She started therapy. She read books. She journaled. She reconnected with old friends. She remembered what laughter sounded like. She wore color again. She danced barefoot in her living room. She talked to herself with kindness. Every day she reclaimed pieces of her soul that she had given away. The more she grew, the more invisible Adrian became. His words lost their sting. His presence lost its power. She no longer sought his validation. She no longer feared his absence. She had become her own anchor, her own source, her own mirror, and when she finally walked away for good, she didn't look back. There was no need. She had learned the most important lesson, that love is not something you earn by abandoning yourself. It is something that grows when you choose yourself again and again. Adrian moved on quickly, as narcissists do. He found new supply, someone new to charm and control, but he would never again have the power he had over Alara, because she had become immune to manipulation. She had learned to spot the red flags hidden in romantic words. She had built boundaries. She had turned her sensitivity into a superpower, not a weakness. And she knew now, empathy without boundaries is self-destruction. Love without self-respect is captivity. And healing is not always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet return to yourself. Years later, people asked Alara how she got over him. She would smile and say, "I didn't just get over him. I rose above him. I stopped trying to make him see my worth and started seeing it for myself. I stopped trying to fix the unfixable and started building a life rooted in truth." I woke up, and when the empath wakes up, the narcissist loses all power, because the real power was never theirs. It was borrowed. And once reclaimed, it cannot be stolen again. Alara became a light for others. She shared her story. She helped other empaths find their voice. She reminded them that they were not broken. They were just deeply feeling souls in a world that often doesn't understand sensitivity. But the world needs sensitivity. It needs kindness with boundaries. It needs compassion with clarity. It needs empaths who are awake. Because awake empaths don't just survive narcissists. They transform the world by healing themselves. And as for Adrian, he faded into the background. A shadow in her past. A lesson learned. He didn't change. Narcissists rarely do. But that no longer mattered. Because Alara had changed. She had awakened. And in that awakening, she became untouchable.